Hey Russ, hope you enjoy listening to this episode. Thanks for editing as always. And yeah, you guys have anything you want to say to Russ?
Hi, Russ. Thanks for editing. You're the man.
Yeah, you're everywhere, dude.
All right, so we'll count down to 3 and then actually get going here. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of Zooperflex. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Matt. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'll have something for our positive news this week. So excited about that. I went out. I couldn't handle the haircut situation anymore. It had been July since January that I had a haircut, and I've been trying really not hard not to go out, but I couldn't handle it anymore. So I got a haircut. So things are good, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually got a haircut before I started my job. It's weird because they put on like a welder's mask. I don't know if they did that with you too.
No, actually. And I was a little bit sad because the person that I was with, he had a buff around his neck. But he didn't actually put it up until I asked him to. I almost walked out when I saw him not wearing it initially, but it's kind of like my local shop and I want to support them and all that. So I probably should have encouraged that behavior, but he did put it up once I asked him. So it was all right.
Yeah, it's always good to shop local. It was definitely interesting to get my haircut with the welder's mask, but I'm going to go ahead and we've made our guest wait long enough, so I'm going to introduce our guest. We are lucky enough to be joined by Scott Connor. You all should know him as Charles Chills FB on Twitter. He's a fellow writer of ours at Dynasty League Football. He hosts his own podcast, the Dynasty Chill Pod. He's the co-host of Chase the Helmet, and he's also a 4-time FFPC main event champion, which I actually did not know until I looked at your bio earlier today. That's very impressive. But welcome to the show, Scott, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I've listened to the show in the past, so honored to be here and have a haircut story that I'll tell here in a second if you want me to kick it back to you to continue the intro, or should I go ahead and tell my haircut
absolutely.
story now?
Go with your haircut story. If you've listened to the show, you know that we go on plenty of tangents.
Yeah, so obviously during the quarantine, I couldn't go out and get a haircut, and I usually go in. I'm the best customer because I go in and just say, military style cut, buzz it off. And they look at me like, really? That's all you want? You don't actually want to sit in the chair and take more than 5 minutes? And so usually I'm the customer that they love because they get paid, boom, turn the chair, come in, get somebody else. But I couldn't go out and get a haircut, and it started to get a little shaggy. And this, I know we're on video, but this beard is probably 3 days old. So, I mean, it grows fast. And,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, so you can relate that those couple days after the shave is like you're shocked how fast it comes back. Like a week later, it doesn't even look like you even touched it. But no, I decided to give myself a haircut during the quarantine, which sounds great, except when you miss a spot in the back and then go back to work, and someone wonders if that should be like that. Well, what are you talking about? But yeah, missed about probably an inch by inch spot on the back of the left side of my head, and it's almost a little splotch. So never giving myself a military style cut again. So there's my haircut.
Nice.
Yeah, you should probably stay away from giving yourself haircuts. I actually, before I decided to bite the bullet and do this one, I had my wife just clean it up around the ears a little bit. And when I went in, they were like, don't do that. You basically messed up your hair. I said I did it myself because I didn't want them to blame her at all because she was trying to do me a favor.
Nice.
Yeah. So that is what happens when you try to give yourself a haircut in quarantine. Take that advice from Scott. Don't do it. And we're going to talk about another. I'm trying to find a way to transition this here. I guess the best way would be like, we're going to talk about a quarterback that some people think is the equivalent of giving yourself a haircut. And that's Josh Allen. Scott and I were having a conversation on Twitter recently about the fact that his ADP is so high, but his trade value doesn't really match that. And Scott, just why don't you give a little background on that and also give your thoughts, and then we'll jump over to Matt and his thoughts.
Yeah, so our topic really came out of a Twitter post that I put out there and said that, is there a quarterback that's market value is so far off from his ADP? Because, yeah, Josh Allen is, according to DLF, he's quarterback 8. But it seems like if you have Josh Allen, you're not finding any equivalent. If you wanted to trade him, you're not finding any equivalent pivots out there where you're able to even get anything on top of some quarterbacks that are a little bit further down. And I think our discussion turned into you can't even swap him straight up for a lot of guys that are quote unquote lower than him in ADP. And, I think that's for two reasons. I think one, a lot of people that have Josh Allen are people that believed in him or at least believed in the value because he was going, mid-second of Superflex drafts when he came out, which in hindsight is a mistake. We've learned from Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, and maybe we'll even learn from a little bit more expensive Justin Herbert this year. But I think a lot of people that have Josh Allen are kind of acknowledging the fact that they got him at a deal and they're trying to sell high. They're trying to sell because he has that ADP quarterback 8 next to his name. But I do think they also acknowledge that, hey, this is a big year for Josh Allen. This is his third year. And for fantasy, he's been great. But I think we're kind of going towards in the NFL where teams are not necessarily tying themselves to these quarterbacks for as long as they used to. It used to be if you were a first round pick, you were going to get 5 years unless you could never get on the field. A guy that started 2 years right away like Allen was probably going to roll out his entire 5 years. And I just don't know if that's going to necessarily be the case. I mean, we're probably going to see it with Trubisky. He'll get the plug pulled on him probably before his 5 years are up. And then we've seen, kind of the fallout from Mariota and Winston, not getting second contracts as a starter. So I just think there's a little risk with these guys that are the third year, Mayfield, Allen, Darnold. I think this is a big year for them. If they don't go forward in terms of the eyes of their franchise, I think there's some risk that, especially Allen, because I think he's polarizing. He obviously is good for fantasy, but I think he's seen from a real NFL perspective as much worse than he is from a fantasy perspective. So I think there's some risk with him. So yeah, I've been trying to pivot off of him, but maybe I'm trying to get a little bit too much. I'm trying to swap him out for, Daniel Jones. That's probably not one you can do. So the move I was trying to make is really, if you think that maybe he only has a 2 or 3 year shelf life, you probably you still have the same shelf life with a guy like Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers. They're going to be starters as long as they're in the NFL. So, trying to make a pivot like that, I've even been unsuccessful. I tried to buy Matt Ryan for a while and couldn't even trade, Josh Allen for Matt Ryan plus. So just hard to trade him for his market value, based on his ADP. So you're almost just kind of stuck with where the community is on him right now.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, he makes me nervous as well. He averaged about 56% completion rate in college at Wyoming. He's through 2 years in the NFL. He had a 52.8 in his rookie season and 58.8 for an average of 56.3. So he seems to be like that mid 50s passer, and that's kind of what he's going to be. And for a coach, I imagine that is pretty mind numbing. So the Bills did went ahead and drafted a safer guy this year and Jake Fromm. So if they are wanting that, more of that extension of the coach, kind of that safer play, then, Fromm is certainly there and maybe an option for them in the future. So I agree with Scott for the most part. Like, he's never been somebody I've been super on. Obviously, like you said, great for fantasy with his rushing ability and the touchdowns, but those aren't going to be there every year. And now they have a bigger back there and Zach Moss that can take some of that away from him potentially. So, I'm not super into Josh Allen at all. In fact, I did move a share. I look after I saw him on the show notes and we were going to talk about him. And I listened to Scott earlier this week on, I think, the Blueprint when you guys were talking about Josh Allen a little bit. So I wanted to look up exactly what I did for him. So in Red List 2, which is a two tight end required league, I moved Allen, Marlon Mack, and Dallas Goedert, and picked up Breeze, Kareem Hunt, and George Kittle. I wanted to get that tight end upgrade, so because it's a contending team, so I was able to do that, and I felt good about it. I felt good about being able to get out of that a situation, and he was my quarterback 3, so moved on to Breeze as a quarterback 3. That's fine, and be able to pick up that elite tight end and a better running back situation as well. So, but I agree in general, like, it's hard to move him at all. Like, if you want to take him and move down a few steps, like it seems like something people are not willing to do right now. So you might have to move down several steps or pick up something else to kind of or add something to it to really get what you want out of him right now. So difficult piece to move and definitely full of risk, I think. So not one of my favorite guys in the top 10. I think I have him around 12, maybe, or 12 or 13 right now, right around there with Daniel Jones. So if you can make that move, that's probably a good one. I have issues with Jones too, as Bobby well knows, but as a pivot point, I think that is probably your best bet, but you might even have to add to that to get to Jones.
Yeah, I can attest to that. In my conversation with Scott, I was talking about the fact that I do have one Allen share. It's in a 12-team Superflex best ball, and I was trying to move him. And I even tried to approach the Jones owner. Initially, I did Jones in a first, kind of just shooting the moon a bit there and seeing if they would go for it, and they said no. And then I came down to, okay, I'll do it straight up for Jones. You're really twisting my leg here type strategy. And they still said no. So that just goes to show that I think Jones is already being more valued than Allen despite the ADP.
The one thing I will say though is like I think one of the reasons why it's so hard to move him to a different spot is like after those top 5, top 6, if you want to throw Wilson in there, I don't know if I do based on age, but like after that, like the next quarterback 7 through like 20 maybe like they all feel pretty like similar in terms of, you know, there's obviously some age difference there, maybe some upside differences there, but in terms of like just pure quarterback production, like it just seems like all of those guys could be quarterback 7 like this time next year. So I guess that's one argument for him. If he's your guy and you like the rushing ability and you aren't worried about the long-term risk of him remaining a starter, then, you know, he maybe has that upside. But for me, I'd rather try to get to one of these other guys in that similar tier down, all the way down to 20, all the way down even to like if I have to move him for like what can I get if I want to move him for Darnold, what can I get on top of Darnold for him? If I want to move him for Locke, what can I get on top of Locke for him? And if it's anything of significant value, like I'm willing to make those kind of moves all day.
You mentioned Drew Lock, and I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
I know we talked about him. I'm not the biggest fan either, but like, is there really a whole lot of difference between, just from a pure production standpoint, is there really that much difference between Locke's outlook in 2020 and Josh Allen's? I mean, Locke clearly has the better surrounding talent, right? So and feels like he's a safer guy. He's maybe one you could, and we talked about this, Bobby, that maybe his long-term future also is pretty uncertain. But I'd say it's pretty close to what Allen's is.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I'm just not a Locke guy. I guess I do have one question for you, and you mentioned the weapons a bit. And the question is for both of you. Did Buffalo trading for Stephon Diggs make you feel any better about Allen's outlook?
So I think one thing I was going to say was exactly what you just asked, is I think they bring in Stephon Diggs, who's known for his route running and his separation. So I think they're trying to build around Josh Allen in this window. I think the worry with him, and Matt made a great point about Sam Darnold, I think if you're going to pivot off Allen, you have to do it to somebody else that the market sees as a little bit of a downtrodden asset as well. You know, Darnold, a lot of people are off of him for the same reason. They don't like his situation. They don't like his coach. But I think that the bigger worry for me with Allen, and even with Daniel Jones, I think the risk that people see with Jones and Allen are similar. But with Jones, you're basically getting an extra year because he's going into his sophomore year, whereas Allen's going to be in year 3. I think the bigger worry with Allen is even if he shines with Diggs, and even if he does take that step forward, what's his translation? Because the other thing is we're going to see, we saw Mahomes get signed. We saw Watson about to get signed or potentially going to get signed. We're going to see Prescott get signed. So I think it's going to create this market to where there's basically going to be the haves and the have-nots. And if you're a have-not, it does not make sense to go down the Derek Carr, Andy Dalton route where you pay these guys like $25, $30 million if you know they're an average quarterback. So my question with Allen is not that I don't think he's a good enough starter to be a starter in the NFL, but let's say the Bills say, you know what, he's been solid, but we haven't gotten anywhere in the playoffs. We're going to move on, kind of like Tampa Bay did with Winston. What's his market to another team? The Bills have spent 2 years building around Josh Allen's style. If he all of a sudden became a free agent right now, how many teams actually would say, hey, this guy fits what we want? How many offensive coordinators or head coaches are going to say, you know what, we can work with this guy? So in that way, I actually like a guy like Darnold better, because I think if you polled NFL people, they would say they'd rather have Darnold right now where he is if they had 2 years to work with him versus Josh Allen. So that's my concern with Allen is if the Bills don't keep him, who will tie themselves to him going forward? You know, are there only maybe 3 or 4 NFL teams that are going to say, yeah, we run a similar style, you know, we can make what he does work? Versus I think Mayfield or Darnold, if they don't hit that threshold where they get the big contract, I do think they will have more open possibilities for opportunities elsewhere.
What about as a backup to Lamar Jackson? How about that? That sounds pretty good for Josh Allen.
Yeah, exactly why you'd want to have him in Dynasty, right? Backup
right.
in 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can move on because we're starting to get to the point where we're basically just ragging on Allen. And as someone who is still stuck with him, I have to try to hold out some hope that he can be
man.
relevant.
All those shares are not helping ourselves with this podcast, are we?
I would almost rather if you can make a move like that and get a significant piece on top of, again, somebody like Darnold, Goff, Lock, somewhere in that range. But I think honestly, if it's a super flex format, I would rather try. I don't know how much it would cost you. I guess you have to find the right guy. Find yourself a Bills fan and try to pay up for somebody above him. Pay up. How much does it cost to get from Allen to Wilson? I don't know. Maybe the first. I would do it. I think that's worth doing.
I will say I shot myself in the foot a few months ago because I was talking with someone about a Bills fan about trading for Josh Allen, and he had Sam Darnold. And it was before I really dug into Darnold more deeply over the last few seasons. But he was like, well, all I really have to offer you is Darnold and maybe some picks or something. And I was like, I'm not really feeling that based on more or less what Scott was talking about with the ADP. And now I'm just like, you're an idiot. Why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
I would take Darnold in a first for Allen easily all day.
Yeah, he later traded Darnold and a first and a second for some other piece that was similar to Allen, and I just realized I really messed up. So
happens to all of us.
I did trade an Allen share the other day, but it wasn't exact a pivot on this type of trade. It wasn't a quarterback for quarterback move, but I did get a deal involving I traded Allen, Darius Geis, DJ Chark, and TJ Hawkinson for Christian McCaffrey, Duke Johnson, and Tevin Coleman. So, I mean, the other guy needed a quarterback, and I had to give up, Hawkinson and Chark, which are, big pieces. But I think the idea was kind of like what Matt said. I was able to sell the other guy that, hey, 30% of that deal I'm giving is equity with Josh Allen. I'd rather do that and make it work at quarterback elsewhere and try to figure that out. Because I can get a quarterback. The beautiful thing about what Matt said about the quarterback tier being from like 7 to 21 being really flat is you can probably go out there and get a Garoppolo or Tannehill or Bridgewater. Like if you really wanted to pay up and you needed a quarterback, you could probably get those guys for draft picks or for a receiver or something like that. So I figured, hey, if this guy's going to offer me one of the chips that I can give in the deal to get McCaffrey is Josh Allen, then boom, I got to hit accept.
Yeah, that was definitely a smart move and is definitely the opposite of giving yourself a haircut in quarantine.
Yes.
We are going to actually talk about some of the other guys that we briefly touched on in this conversation, and we're going to start with Aaron Rodgers. Big friend and fan of the show, John Hogue, is still convinced that Rodgers can be the QB1. Matt is a Packers fan. So we're going to start with Matt this time and let him just really just tell us how you feel after the draft, Matt.
Are you guys familiar with this is an animal show too, right, Bobby? So are you guys familiar with like a certain behavior that the cuckoo bird has?
Can't say
the cuckoo bird, one of the things they like to do is to land into a nest of another bird that has eggs in it, push one of their eggs out, and lay their eggs in there, and have the other birds basically raise their baby for them. And it's also, if you didn't know, that's where the term cuck comes from. So I feel like Aaron Rodgers is like the cuck of the football world right now. He's taking care of the team. And the team, they planted that Jordan Love egg in that nest, and now they're going to have him take care of him. I don't know, man. I have been a Packers fan for 30 years, and this last draft class has made me seriously question that. But in terms of 2020, I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll be better than last year. I think he has a chance to get up in that 3,800 to 4,000 yard range, which certainly isn't elite anymore. 25 to 30 touchdowns. I think that he can probably get to 30 if Jay Sternberger kind of makes a leap as like a second receiving option, because clearly they decided that in the best wide receiver draft in history, they weren't going to help him out at all. So to me, it feels like the writing is on the wall for Rodgers, but he's the type, and then this is totally narrative street. I get that. But I do, as following him for so long, I do know that he's the type that, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to try to make something happen with that team and prove them that they were wrong for drafting that quarterback, whether that leads to them keeping him or moving on for him or whatever, I don't know. But I think he's not going to let that let their treatment of him kind of affect his ability on the field. So I do have a little bit of optimism for him for this year, but as a dynasty asset, he's clearly declining. I think I'm probably the highest ranker on him at this point. I think I'd have him just like outside the top 10, maybe 11, something like that. But he probably does belong down in the range with those other older guys, Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford. And it's hard to say at this point that they don't have better offensive weapons than he does. So it's tough. I think that he still has some elite seasons in him if he was able to move on or get to a team that is going to, surround him with talent, which the Packers haven't done since spending a high pick on Devontae Adams, years ago. So I don't know. I'm kind of in limbo with him. Like if I have him on my team, I'm probably keeping him. I don't think you can really get enough for him to warrant moving him unless you're in a complete rebuild and you're just selling off assets. Like if you're in a contending kind of mode, I don't think you're going to really be able to get enough to make it worth your while. So I'm probably going to ride and die with Rodgers, but maybe that's part of me being a Packer fan.
At least you guys got AJ Dillon. So
at least
just got to get that running back. Scott, let's hear what you have to say about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so I think we have to look at this from, the idea of he can still be the quarterback one is, that's just ridiculous. That's, his finishes the last couple of years have gone downhill. He was quarterback 6 in 2017, then quarterback 9 in 2018, quarterback 14 in 2019. So nothing about that trend tells you that he can be the quarterback 1, let alone a quarterback 1 is probably a good outcome for him in 2020. But then you even look at, I know quarterback rating isn't the everything, but his quarterback rating, he hasn't finished in the top 10 in quarterback rating in the last 2 years. So nothing really points to him being an elite quarterback anymore. But I do think that kind of the discussion we had with Josh Allen, I think this range of quarterback, if you're willing to take on the risk that maybe you can get, let's just say 3 more low-end quarterback 1, high quarterback 2 seasons from Rodgers, I do think he actually is a buy for me in Dynasty because there's a lot of other quarterbacks that are within that same tier that do carry risk. And kind of what I mentioned before, if Rodgers is in the NFL, he's going to start. It's not like he's going to fade out so badly that he's a backup. Whereas I don't think that's not out of the range of outcomes for, Drew Lock or even Jimmy Garoppolo or Tannehill or Bridgewater. These guys basically have huge 2020 seasons in front of them. If they don't have a good season, you're going to see some jobs that we don't expect. One weird thing, if you just go back at the ADP from 3 years ago, we're just talking 3 years, and you just go through the top like 20, it's Mariota, it's Winston, it's Carr, it's Luck, it's Dalton, it's Bortles. All these guys were littered in the top 20. So there's going to be attrition within a year or two that we don't even see coming. There's going to be guys that we're valuing, quarterback 18, 19 now. In 2 years, they're worthless. And so there is a level of security with Rodgers. And I think of what Matt said, Ryan, Stafford, and Rodgers, he has by far the least steam right now in the community. A lot more people would probably want to buy those guys over Rodgers. So I do think there's an opportunity. If you have somebody that maybe you fish around and they're a little worried about his age, I'm totally fine, trying to move around some of these other guys, like a Gardner Minshew. If you could add to Minshew and get Rodgers, I think you're buying yourself a lot more security there. Bridgewater, same thing. If you look at his deal, it's possible that they push him with a quarterback in 2021 that quickly. So, I think there's some pivot opportunities that I'm actually see Rodgers as having a pretty safe 3-year window. And I want to get Matt's take on this, but the Jordan Love thing is there. What could possibly happen? What if Rodgers ends up replacing Garoppolo or something in San Francisco in like a year or two? There's not a non-zero chance that happens. So, maybe he finished out his career somewhere like Peyton Manning and he can have another year or two where it's like the offense props him up to a top 5 or 6 quarterback versus him having to do it right now in Green Bay.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know he can be elite. He's been elite in the past. So I think it's still in him. It's, either it's, sucking down his own ego and finding a team that is going to give him some weapons to play with. Cause he just hasn't had that. Like when you're starting, listen, I like Alan Lazard just fine. But when you're starting Alan Lazard and MVS and you're trying to make it work with a Jimmy Graham that can't move at all, like it just like, what do you, I don't know, maybe I'm making excuses, but I do think one of the mistakes we're making with Rodgers is something that is a mistake that we probably made with Brady. Once he hit 36, 37 years old, we were like, oh, he's done. He's going to be out of here in a couple of years. It's time to move on from him, sell him. And, Rodgers I think he's a guy who's going to play to 40, play to 41. So potentially you have, like you said, that security. So, I mean, if we, in a startup draft, if he's in a Superflex startup draft, if he's falling super far and you can get him for cheap, you could have a 4 to 5 year starter on your hands pretty easily. So I still think there's some value there, and maybe, like you said, it is, a lot to do with the security of him, but he's going to be starting as long as he's in the league. And if Green Bay isn't going to appreciate him, somebody is going to appreciate him.
Despite my ribbing at Matt a bit, and not so much for Dynasty, I did take Rodgers as my QB2 in the Scott Fish Bowl. So
safe there. I mean, he hasn't thrown double-digit interceptions for a decade. So I think you're looking pretty good with 60.
And I paired him with Kyler, who I thought was a bit of a more risky pick, but you have to make those risky picks to win a tournament like that. But I figured the pairing of the two of them should make me pretty well set at quarterback. And I'm with you guys. I do think Rodgers is probably a buy. I think a lot of these older quarterbacks we do tend to devalue. I have a personal example where in 2017, I bought Phillip Rivers for a late first, and he's continued to start for that team for the past 3 or 4 years because the guy sold him being like, oh, he's not going to start in like a year or two. And he's given me way more value than even honestly I anticipated at the time. So it's never a terrible idea to try to buy low on some of these older quarterbacks. And the guy we're going to talk about next isn't necessarily on the older side, but he's not as young as some. And that's Matthew Stafford, who pretty much everyone at this point knows that before he got injured, he was a QB6 in points per game and on a ridiculous pace, both in real life and fantasy wise. And I want to get both your takes on Stafford, but also a little bit on Galladay, because Galladay obviously still kind of balled out last year without Stafford there. And I personally think he's going to have a huge season because of that. And Scott, let's get you to give your take first this time.
Stafford was a weird one because after the season ended, it ended on such a sour note that I actually heard people talking about, well, hey, with his wife's condition, she had the brain tumor last summer, and then he ended the season hurt. There were some, and I don't know if these were just Twitter rumblings, but there were some rumblings that, hey, he may be a guy that hangs it up early. He doesn't really play through another contract. And if you look at just DLF's ADP, he was quarterback 19 in January. And that was before Tua, Burrow, and Herbert even came into the ADP. And then now he's quarterback 15, and that's with Burrow, Tua, and Herbert in there. So he's essentially gained 7 spots from January to June. And what's really happened? Other than Narrative Street about, hey, he returned to form in 2019 for the first 8 games. He was basically on pace with what he had done from 2011 to 2017 before that. 2018 was an outlier, obviously. But if you really look at his career, it's very similar to, and he's better, I think, but it's very similar to Phillip Rivers, where it's just like, what you're getting every single year. And he puts up the volume as well to where, I think if you can predict that he's going to stay around, I actually think he's getting to the point now where I think he's a little there's too much shine on him to where it's kind of hard to buy low at this point. Quarterback 15 is pushing it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, if you could guarantee that he was going to play into his late 30s, I mean, for the same reasons we said to buy Rodgers, I think it's even more enhanced with Stafford. So I think he's going to return this year to, kind of where they were before. And regarding Galladay, I think Galladay is one of those guys where it's like he's already being valued at his ceiling. And I do think there's a chance that he has one of those ultimate seasons where he does get 150, 160 targets. But my thoughts on him are, if anyone's heard my rants on wide receivers, I mean, wide receivers at this point in Dynasty are so saturated outside of the target hogs. And there's maybe 2 or 3 target hogs, maybe even 2 now that, Hopkins is going to Arizona. When I get down in that range where, I have any volatility with the offense or with the quarterback, and you're only getting like 135, 140 targets, I tend to just want to pivot off of those guys. So I think Galladay at his price, if I had to pick buy or sell just to go that route, I'd probably sell him and just try to pivot down to, DJ Chark or someone like that. You can probably get something on top of it. So, he's a year away from hitting that age 27 point where it's like people start to freak out about how long he's going to last. So I think he'd be a sell, but I can understand where people are projecting him really high for 2020.
Yeah. And Matt, what do you think on both of those takes?
Yeah, Stafford is such a crazy case because he's only 31. How is he only 31? It's because he started playing when he was 21. I think the potential is there. I think you might be right, Scott. I think he's someone who could go either way. He could play another 10 years, or he could hang it up early. He's made so much money already, and if he's going to keep playing, he's going to get another contract. In fact, while we're sitting here, I just wanted to look up specifically. This is from a post from late January on Spotrac. But right now, this is before Patrick Mahomes' contract and all this. But he was the ninth, has made the ninth most money in his career at $211 million, and he's going to get another gigantic contract if he continues to play. Past 2022, I think, is when they're probably going to have to think about re-signing him, maybe even 2021, after 2021. So it's going to be up to him. But in terms of his outlook, I mean, I think he's such an underrated quarterback, just in terms of what he's done production wise. He's never been outside of the Calvin Johnson years, and maybe even during those years outside of Calvin Johnson, he's never been really surrounded with super elite pass catching weapons. And now he has two really good ones, I think. Kenny Golladay, like we mentioned, he would probably be a sell for me too, just based on the things that Scott said. But I would be buying Marvin Jones if I'm looking for some veteran production. He's somebody who has produced every year he's been healthy. I think he's a threat for double-digit touchdowns. That's such a funnel offense towards those two. And depending on how you feel about Hawkinson coming into this year, it really is those top two. And like, what else is there at receiver for those guys, for the Lions? So, based on the receivers, I would rather have Jones just based on price right now, as I think the production isn't going to be too similar. I would bet if both receivers stay healthy, I bet they're both over 1,000 yards, and I bet they're both close to double-digit touchdowns. And Golladay, is probably going to have 200 or 300 yards more than Jones, but I don't think it's going to be such a big difference where it necessitates that difference in price. I didn't pull up the ADP difference, but I imagine it's probably like 10 plus rounds between the two of them. Golladay is like a 4th or 5th round pick at this point, and I'm sure Jones is going after the 10th to 12th round somewhere in there just because of age. So I'm okay with Stafford. I think if I have him, he's another guy that I don't think you're necessarily going to get value for trading, and he might be a little bit too expensive at this point at quarterback 15 to warrant trading for. But go back to Josh Allen. I would probably move Josh Allen. I don't think you have to move him straight up for Stafford, but if it came down to it and I needed to, I would. I think you could probably get something on top of Stafford back for Allen at this point. But if not, that's a move I don't mind making. If we're looking at long-term outlook, I mean, is it really guaranteed that Allen has more starts left in him than Matt Stafford? I'm not sure that it is. So, I like Stafford. I just don't know. I think he's kind of like an ultimate hold, because I don't know if you're going to really get too much out of him at this point if you're trying to move him.
Yeah, to back up your point on Jones, at least, I actually have gotten him for 3rd round rookie picks on a few contenders, so he is excessively cheap. Stafford, I have as now a 4th quarterback in a 14-team league. We just had our rookie auction, and for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to bid on Justin Herbert too. So I now have Herbert, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, and Stafford. And so I decided, just out of curiosity, to put Stafford on the block, figuring, okay, if I can get a decent wide receiver or running back for him, I'll at least consider it, since I have 4 guys. And I didn't get any bites. In fact, I tried to trade with someone else and go out on my own. And I think it was like, I'll give you Matthew Stafford for like Gardner Minshew, David Johnson, and a rookie pick. And they were like, no, I'm not doing that. So Stafford is just incredibly underrated.
You know who you need to move, Bobby. Come on. You know which one you need to move. You never will, but you know which one you need to move.
Daniel Jones is staying on my team. I think that might be my only Daniel Jones share too. So he's definitely staying there.
Well, that's why we almost just need to crowdsource it and try to move any of the 3 and see where you can get the best for the 3. Because I do think you have, similar risk with all of them. You know what I mean? I think you probably would be better off shopping all 3 and seeing what the best offer is. Because process-wise, I mean, I think Stafford would be the one you'd want to hold there. He's probably the most predictable of the three as long as he can stay healthy. But yeah, his market buzz is probably lower than the other two for sure.
Yeah, and I bought Baker in this offseason, actually, thinking, okay, I really want an upgrade at quarterback. And then just things kind of fell into place that I ended up with Herbert too. So we'll see what happens. But I've always been a Stafford fan. I won my first fantasy football league ever. And this is showing people that I have not been playing that long with Matthew Stafford. I believe it was either his rookie season or his second season. He was my quarterback, and he was super inconsistent, but he was on my team and he won. Or I won. So then I felt that psychological like attachment to him of, hey, you quarterbacked my winning team. So I've always been a pretty big Stafford fan that way. We are going to transition though into our animal of the week. And Scott, what we like to do is have our guests tell us a bit about why they picked that animal. So in your case, it was lions, and
I thought it was tigers.
Or sorry, was it tigers?
I thought it was
tigers.
I put in the wrong thing in the show sheet. That's on me. And that will be an early extinction of the week of me putting wrong things in the show sheet. So tell everyone why you like tigers, and then Matt will give some fun facts about tigers.
Well, it's funny that you brought up lions, because that's where my fascination always stemmed from. Is ever since I was a kid, I loved tigers. I thought they were just beautiful, majestic animals. But I always had, kind of this wonder in the back of my mind, lions versus tigers, who are the true king of the jungle? And I'm a Bengals fan, so that has nothing to do with the Tigers, but I always took, a liking to tiger images and tiger logos. But the reason I love tigers is, you can go on, I want to get Matt's take on this too, because you can go on YouTube and, basically look up who would win in a fight, lions versus tigers. And it's amazing. It's amazing how scientific some of those videos are, hour-long breakdowns of all of the traits and all of the behavior characteristics and stuff as to why, the tiger would have the advantage or the lion would have the advantage. And then, of course, it's always, someone will say, well, they'll go on for 45 minutes and then say, well, it depends. Depends on where the fight is, what are the conditions, all of that kind of stuff. But just to me, tigers they're just fascinating animals. I'm a cat lover. I have 4 cats. So I've just always taken a liking to cats. And so to me, the tigers are the king of the jungle. My conclusion was tigers would win over lions. So that's why tigers, really no more scientific than that.
And Matt, do you have some fun facts to share about tigers, as well as a charity where people can donate if they want to support tigers? I know we've talked about, I believe it was Big Cat in the past. Is that one of the ones?
Oh no! Don't go to Big Cat Rescue.
Yeah, not now.
That fucking Carol Baskins. No, do not send your money to Carol Baskins, please. The charity is Panthera.org is the one I like for big cats. They do a ton of good work, not with just with tigers, with lions, jaguars, snow leopards, cheetahs, stuff like that. Pretty much all of the quote unquote big cats. But tigers I usually don't like to talk about animal versus animal, but I think a tiger would probably destroy a lion. Lions are just having worked with both, lions are quite a bit less intimidating than tigers are. If the lion has their pride with them, now we're talking about something else, because tigers, they are solitary animals. You're probably not going to find them sharing the same location too much, mostly because of resource distribution, right? If you're a tiger, you need a lot of food, so you don't want to really be overlapping territory too much with others. But I did learn today when I was looking at them that a group of tigers, any guesses what they might be called? Because groups of animals are called different things, like a flock or a pride, or one of my favorite one is crows. It's a murder of crows. But tigers have a good one too. Any guesses?
No, I'm stumped.
I was really trying to come up with something creative and just couldn't do it.
There are 2. One of them is an ambush of tigers, which I think is pretty cool. And it makes sense because they are ambush predators. They're not somebody like a cheetah that's going to, chase down their prey, for long distances or whatever. They're more ambush predators. They're nocturnal. They're going to stalk their prey. So that's pretty neat. tigers, you may have heard, probably maybe from watching Tiger King, because everybody has seen that. Tigers can mate with other big cats. You can have a lion and a tiger mate, and they're called a liger, or a lion or whatever. I think there's another version too, depending on if it's the male or female of which one. Tiger stripes, they're not just their fur; they're actually found on their skin. So that's pretty neat. If you shave them down, they're still striped. This one is funny. Bobby, you have a dog. Have you ever smelled the bottom of your dog's feet? This is probably a weird question.
It kind of smells like corn chips.
Yeah, they smell like Fritos, right? Well, tiger urine. I'm not sure if I could say this. I don't know if I've ever necessarily smelt it on purpose, but some people like to say, and including some of my friends who are tiger keepers, say that tiger urine kind of smells like buttered popcorn. I'm going to take their word for it. But yeah, so they have a really kind of diverse diet. They basically eat whatever they can get their paws on: boars, deer, rodents, bears, at times birds, rhinos, crocodiles. So they're just pretty badass cats, man.
I'm just going to add one thing here, and it's my own personal knowledge of tigers. It's more an entertainment thing. It's not an actual informative thing. But everyone knows from The Hangover about Mike Tyson's tiger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He was forced to sell that tiger because it ripped someone's arm off. So do not have tigers as pets. That's my PSA. No tigers as pets.
That is a good PSA. Do you guys know why? We're totally off the rails now. But do you guys know why Tyson became a fighter, like in the first place?
Does it have to do with tigers?
No, but it has to do with animals. He used to raise pigeons on the roof. He had I don't know if you've ever seen I guess people in New York, they have these big coops where they raise pigeons, and Mike Tyson did that. And a bully came over one day and grabbed a pigeon and broke its neck in front of him, and Mike Tyson decked him. Wow. And that was kind of the start of his fighting career. So
that's awesome. Although I'm not going to lie, when you mentioned it initially, I thought he had like a Batman like origin story where it was like, I don't know, tigers like killed his parents in the alley, and so he kept one as a pet to show who was dominant or something. I really don't know where you were going with that, but
one other thing I'll say, I put it in the chat for you guys to watch if you want. But if you guys listening, if you want to Google it or go to YouTube, you can search for, I think it's like most famous tiger attack or something. You can see a tiger, like there's a guy riding an elephant in India, and a tiger comes out of the tall grass basically and jumps up, like tries to grab this guy off of an elephant. It's insane.
That sounds.
Ooh, I gotta check that out.
That sounds really intense. Well, thanks for letting us know about tigers, Matt. And again, that was panthera.org.
Yes, panthera.org. They do great work. I have friends that work for that organization.
And with that, we are going to transition to what we would rather go extinct rather than tigers or lions or any other animal. I guess I'll lead it off since I already preempted mine. But now it's just going to be don't mess up show sheets, self, and also self. You didn't work out today, and you should have worked out today. So, self, you're burned. And you should go extinct, at least today. Matt, do you have one you want to share with the people?
I'm gonna stay with the one I've been going with the last couple of weeks, Bob, because people still aren't doing it. Wear your freaking masks. Arizona, I saw a report yesterday on NPR. Over the last week, Arizona is number 1 in the world, and like there's countries included in this list in terms of new COVID cases. Like we're not going to get out of this if you guys continue to not wear your mask. So just wear your mask, and if you don't wear your mask, then I'm happy to have you go extinct.
And Scott, do you have an extinction of the week?
Yeah, I have actually kind of piggybacks off of Matt's, and I don't want this to be a PSA about mask wearing and taking care of your health.
I do.
Well, I'll spin it when we get to our positivity. I'll spin it a little bit. But, I walked in the other day to a convenience store, and I did wear my mask. At first, I was somebody that was like, I don't know if these masks are necessary, but I've come around to where, I'm going to do it just for the fellow humans. I'm going to wear it wherever I can. But I was in front of somebody or behind somebody in line, and, they were decked out. They had a mask. They had sanitizing wipes coming out of their pocket, but they were buying cigarettes. And it's just like that is just a snapshot of, maybe how we look at things on one end really well. And then on the other end, it's like, we're kind of, running in place. We're not really getting any going forward with some of this. So that's what I wish would go extinct, is just, I hate to get on anybody about their lifestyle because we all have our vices, but it's like, yes, we're wearing the mask, but there's so many other things out there that we can do that maybe this pandemic will get people to look at their own immunity and their own lifestyle and their health a little bit differently, and not just rely on a mask, or not rely on everybody else to behave a certain way, or not rely on a vaccine. Those things can help, but there's a lot of things we have control over that we've basically just given up on over the years.
Yeah, I hear you there. I definitely think that's true. And to a certain extent, you also see like the response to the pandemic, for example, and there's all this stuff going on with climate change. And you think like, okay, we've responded this way to the pandemic. Why can't we necessarily respond this way to saving the Amazon rainforest or doing something else that might benefit the planet we all live on? That's just a layered rant on top of yours. So I guess I had a bonus extinction of the week, but we will transition to our positivity, and I will let you guys lead off since I led off of mine. And Matt, you can go first since I don't like to put our guests on the spot.
Yeah, I have something this week. As you met Megan, Bobby, my girlfriend, she's actually going to be moving in at the end of the month. So things are progressing, getting a little more serious. So pretty exciting. Yeah, that's what I got. We'll see where that goes. I'm excited and nervous, but got to make that jump at some point, right?
That's fantastic news, and I would have been mad at you if you didn't make that step at some point, because she's great. So
yeah,
I would have called you an idiot if you didn't eventually take it more seriously. And Scott, do you have a positivity of the week?
Yeah, I kind of want to just go full circle on what I talked about with the extinct. Is, you mentioned going to the gym every day, and I think there's so many different things that we can do that maybe during this pandemic, during the quarantine time where you're stuck at home, a lot of self-reflection. I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of this. It would, believe it or not, there's going to be a lot of innovation and a lot of ideas that come out of this, because a lot of people had no choice but to just stop getting caught up in some of the daily, drama, or the daily things that just, basically envelop their whole life. And they've actually had a time to think and a time to spend with family and all of that kind of stuff. So I think just being a little more self-aware about who you are, how you go about your life, what you do for others, and your own health falls into that. There's so many things that we kind of just give up control on and just say, we'll worry about it later. But maybe this is a little bit of a time to self-reflect. So at some point we're going to go back to somewhat normal life, to where we forget about this, even if it's in 2 years from now or whatever. But don't forget about it. Remember those times where you had nothing to do and you were stuck in your house and you couldn't go anywhere and you couldn't see your friends and you couldn't see your family. Remember those times and almost behave like you were like that. Reach out to those people and don't take that stuff for granted. Make some lifestyle changes. So, forget about your own health and immunity. There's only so much you can do, if you were to get COVID-19 or whatnot. But think about that. Think about trying to build your armor up in your own body, in your own health, in your own mental health, and all that stuff as best as you can. And it will help at least deal with some of the stuff we're doing right now.
Yeah, that actually segues. I had two possible positivities for the week, but that segues really well into one of mine, which is I berated myself for not working out today specifically, but recently in the past, I'd say month or so, and I publicly acknowledged it on Twitter recently, but I've been trying to exercise more, and I've been running every other day about 2 or 3 miles. And in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've also have cut out all drinks that are not water or hot teas. So I don't drink any sodas anymore. I don't drink juice. I only drink water or hot tea. And
beer?
Part of that, no beer. I'll probably drink whiskey on occasion, but
coffee?
No coffee, just hot tea and water.
Wow.
Kudos to you, man.
So
I could never.
Yeah, as Scott was talking about, I got to a point where I realized I wasn't as healthy as I wanted to be in terms of my own physical fitness. And I wanted to work on that, and quarantine was a good time to do it. So that's what I've been focusing on. And then the other one I was just going to add is I started a new job this week, as I think a lot of people are aware, and it's going really well, and they're treating me really well. And it's good to see, because I for a lot of people, they may not know this, but I quit my old job because basically I wasn't treated as well as I wanted to be. So it's nice to see the payoff from quitting and going back to school and now starting a new job that I may be in the honeymoon phase, but I'm definitely very happy with it.
New job, new house, man. Bobby, new hygiene, health routine. You are a new man.
That was honestly part of it. Was I told myself I achieved a lot of these other life goals of mine, so I needed a new one to focus on. And it was like, hey, you haven't focused on fitness for a long time. Why don't you do that?
There you go.
Yeah. So that we are going to start to wrap up, but I appreciate again, Scott, you joining us today and the wise words just about football and self-reflection, and also about tigers, not lions, and not giving yourself a haircut in quarantine. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I just appreciate you guys coming on or letting me come on the show. And it was a good time talking about football, but also talking about a lot of other things. I like the setup that you guys have by breaking it up and getting to talk about other life things going on besides football, because who knows what's going to happen with football. That's still kind of up in the air at this point. So just glad to be here. Great discussion. Appreciate the words and appreciate the input from Matt, especially on Tigers, because I'm fascinated by him.
Yeah, it's really good to talk to you, Scott. I've listened to you for a while, so it's great to be on a show with you finally.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's definitely great to be able to podcast with you for the first time. And for those who want to be able to find Scott, you can find him, as I mentioned earlier, Charles Chill FB on Twitter. Hit him up. Check out all the various podcasts we mentioned at the beginning of the show. You can find Matt and his various podcasts that he's on as well at Matt Price FF. I believe he's still doing Dynasty Game Night, although maybe I haven't been paying as much attention to podcasts. It feels like it's been a while, Matt.
It has been a while. We did just do kind of a crossover episode on Trade Addicts, though. So John and I came on and we played a name game, but we are definitely behind on the actual episodes of Dynasty Game Night.
Well, I'll have to check out that Trade Addicts pod, and everyone else should check it out. You should check it out anyway because they're great. And obviously, I'm not just saying that because Russ Fisher edits the show. And with that, we're going to get out of here. But you can find me at Rec Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. And again, I never know why I say this at the end of the show, but you can find this show at Zooperflex on Twitter. Until next time, keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter.